Thank you. Happy May Day, everyone. It is the first rally, I think, since some folks were installed in there. We're not going to congratulate them. We are going to organize and mobilize, and we are going to talk tonight about what the lessons of the election are and what the work that faces us in building the workers' opposition is. I just wanted to say that I love Kathy's story because the first time I heard the Buffalo Cry was in Beijing when I was there 20 years ago more than 20 years ago now for the UN Women's Conference, where I first met the women from the Philippines and women from all over the world who were there to assert their rights. So as I said, this year as we celebrate, the results of the election are very much on people's minds. So what can we say? The ruling circles got the results that they wanted, and those results are going to lead to more acrimony, more dogfighting amongst the ruling circles. They're going to lead to and a dogfight in which they're going to try and embroil the working people. It will only lead to more attacks on workers' rights and the social programs that working people depend on. It's a government in the service of mainly foreign private interests, which has no concern for the working people. So our answer is that the workers' opposition must be front and center in presenting a pro-social direction and its own agenda. An agenda established not on pragmatism, not by choosing between agendas set by others, but about upholding the rights, claims, and striving for empowerment of the workers, of all the working people. Working Canadians are concerned about having a society that looks after the economic and social well-being of those who depend on it for a living. It is a fact that no matter who forms the government, the people are faced with recurring economic crisis. They're faced with the corruption which characterizes both the Kennedy and the Trudeau regimes and others, and with the neoliberal anti-social offensive, and the claim that there's no alternative. During this election, I think we should pay attention to the fact that working people did speak in their own name in the battle for their rights, their claims, and their emancipation. They opposed the wrecking of social programs, demanded increased investments in healthcare and education, and also, very important, as Marin mentioned, is that the youth are fighting for their future. Migrant workers, I think we need to pay particular attention to this. Of course, we always have a strong fighting contingent here from Migrante. Migrant workers are waging a courageous fight for landed status now, and to put an end to worker trafficking, which the state is sanctions. This worker trafficking could not take place without the sanctioning of the state. It's the state which has created these categories to treat people as things which can be dehumanized. So now you have like 1 million categories. You have the workers who come here under the temporary foreign worker program. You have workers who have a possibility of becoming permanent residents and those who don't. You have hundreds of thousands of students who can come here and work, and some may have the possibility of a track to permanent residency and some may not. You have an increasing number of undocumented workers because of the changes which were enacted under the Harper legislation and which Trudeau refused to rescind. And so some people estimate there are as many as 500,000 undocumented workers now in Canada who are the most vulnerable, the most exploited. So the aim of all this is to weaken and eliminate the workers' defense organizations, to super exploit certain sections and bring down wages and working conditions of the entire working class. It is not the refugees and migrant workers who are putting pressure on wages or trampling on the rights of others, but the ruling elite. The migrant workers and all immigrant workers are an integral part of the Canadian working class, and we stand together as one working class. And that's the most important thing that we affirm today. moment about the other people that took a stand during the election. Healthcare workers took a stand, not to say that they wanted the status quo, but to demand increased investments, an end to crippling workloads, and a reversal of privatization in workers' care. And Friends of Medicare has already made it clear that with the Kenney government in power, we're not fighting for the status quo. We're not fighting that no more cuts or something like that, but for health care as a right. Teachers are saying that class size matters and that the teachers' working conditions are the students' learning conditions. And they're not going to give up that fight now. Indigenous people and working people who also, the Indigenous people, the youth, and also working people who live and work in the communities that are dependent on oil and gas, like in Clearwater, are speaking out to protect our water and to demand a serious response to climate change. Injured workers are fighting to demand justice. And we also need to take note that unemployed workers and their communities rallied in their thousands, demanding a solution to the economic crisis, which has left almost 200,000 workers in Alberta unemployed. The ruling circles are putting big pressure. I really want to talk to you about this. There's a very big pressure being put on us that we should just go with this line of block the right, stop the right, and not to take our own independent stand, and that in the upcoming elections, the issue is only to defeat the right and so on. So I think that we, in the midst of all this talk that the working class has now become reactionary, that the working class is racist, that the working class is, everything you can imagine that's something that we stand against. Let's just remember who we are for a minute. 1919, 100 years ago, it was the year of the Great Labour Revolt in Western Canada, with month-long strikes in Edmonton and Calgary, and miners in 42 cities across Alberta holding out for 2 months against state repression, RCMP attacks, and employer goon squads. Did you know that the first teachers' strike in Alberta also took place 100 years ago? Sorry. 1930s, we have the relief strikes of the unemployed, and a 7-month strike of the miners who said no surrender, and who forced the mine owners to finally agree to negotiate with them and won their demands. In 1940s, we had the repeated fights, and right through the 30s to the 40s, of the packing house workers to organize themselves under the most brutal conditions. And many of those brutal conditions really still exist today in these big packing houses. 1980 was the first of 3 strikes by the nurses. And some of you may not remember this or know this or weren't even born then, but the nurses defied the back to work order. There's a famous description by the president of UNA at the time, Margaret Etier, and she said to the lawyers, well, what if we don't go back? What if we defy the order? The lawyer said, you can't do that. Margaret said, I didn't ask you if we could do it. I asked you what would happen. Well, what happened was that the nurses defied the order, and 6 days later, they got a contract, they got a negotiated settlement, and the government had to backtrack. Let's remember for a minute the Battle of the 66th Street, which took place in 1986. And also, if I don't mention it, somebody will be very unhappy, the strike of the workers at Suncor that year, right, Jason? So the Battle of 66th Street, hands up if you were arrested there. Let's see how many. We still have several people here who were arrested there. You know, as many as 700 people were arrested there. I remember the first day, they started hauling us off, we were all sitting there. They're having our little sit-in, and they started hauling us off, and then we said, well, you know, it's easy to haul one person on, so we started yelling, lock arms, lock arms. Everybody locked arms, and they couldn't pull people away from each other, and the pulling people into paddy wagons came to an end. But of course, it was a battle that went on for weeks as unemployed construction workers and all kinds of workers, everyone came there. One day they interviewed one of the packing house workers, or he jumps in front of the camera and he says, please everyone, come down to we're having a rally tomorrow. And I tell you, no word of a lie, 10,000 people showed up. 2002 was the largest strike of teachers in history, with 21,000 teachers on strike. That was 2002. And I might find my place here. Anyway, 2007, I can't forget 2007, that was when the building trades workers defied the legislation again. And every day they would set up by the WCB there, the carpenters would build the scaffolds, the electricians would put things up, and every day they stuck it out for quite a long time, fighting against the unjust labor laws, which, by the way, still exist. So, are we up to the challenge to strengthen the workers' opposition and to be true to that fighting spirit and to pay attention to what is needed now? Woo! So when we march, we say, who decides? We decide. This expresses our fight for empowerment, our conclusion from real-life experience that the workers' movement and people's forces must set their own aims and mobilize to achieve them through our collective action. The crucial work is to build the workers' opposition based on our own thinking and rely on our own organizations, strength in numbers, and unity. It is up to us to provide society with a pro-social aim and to demand our right as the producers of all wealth to a say in what is produced and how it is produced. On May Day, we express our stand that Canada's foreign policy must stop causing harm to other peoples. Today, our hearts and minds are with the people of Venezuela, who have once more foiled the attempts of the U.S. to carry out a coup and destroy the Bolivarian Revolution. The U.S. is also bound and determined to try and destroy revolutionary Cuba as well, and so we send our greetings to the people of Cuba. You may not know, but the administration has now, the U.S. administration has now declared that it's going to use Title III, it's called, of the Helms-Burton Act, which has never been enacted, although it's been the law for many years. And that law says that American law applies over the whole world, and that anybody who trades with Cuba is going to face their sanctions. Anybody who trades in the so-called property which belongs to claim holders, you know, in Miami and so on. The property which was expropriated by the Cuban state. So we say today that we say no to regime change, foreign intervention, aggression, sanctions, blockades, and all acts of war. Make Canada a zone for peace. The Canadian government must not appease the U.S. in any of these endeavors, and we say it must stop. Make Canada a zone for peace. Who decides? We decide. The workers united must never be defeated. Build the workers' opposition. Thank you very much. Let's march.